The Lights Beneath Svalbard, Episode 5, The Evacuation Order. I've often seen emergency evacuation orders in the documents people send me. Disaster alerts, evacuation protocols, abandoned facility scripts, but none quite like the one issued at Station K31. Most evacuation orders are either panic-stricken or bureaucratic. This one was something else. It read as though the people who wrote it were trying very hard not to admit what they'd already realized. The danger wasn't outside the station. The danger was the station. The collapse event was already underway when the command order came through at 2:19. Structural warnings flashed across the upper levels. Several corridors were already distorted beyond use, and a section of the lower shaft had either caved in or been consumed, depending on which report you choose to believe. The first document in this portion of the case was labeled Evac Priority /K 31/Order 7-Red. The text was short, direct, and heavily redacted. All personnel not essential to observation operations are to evacuate immediately to Surface Point A. Observation team to secure critical data and follow once safe. Maintain radio contact at all times. Avoid lower shaft adjacent corridors due to structural instability. Beneath this directive, someone had scribbled in pencil, "Radio contact won't matter. Nothing can hear us over the hum." The author didn't sign, perhaps out of fear or shame. One thing was clear from the gathered materials. The station's population had already been divided. Those near the sleeping quarters and research labs who received the order early, and the observation crew, who remained to collect data until the very last minute. The next item in the file was a recovered segment from the station's overhead speaker system. The audio was degraded, but with some enhancement, the following could be made out. Attention all staff. This is a 7-Red directive. Move to primary evacuation routes. Bring no equipment not essential to life support. Assist others. Remain calm. The usual authoritarian calm one hears in emergency recordings. But then the speaker crackled and another, very different sound bled through. A deep, rolling vibration, like something dragging a massive weight across stone. Someone in the background whispered, "It's below us again." The announcement resumed, as though the station itself was struggling to hold control. The panic begins. The logs indicate that as the first group began moving toward the upper exit, conditions deteriorated rapidly. Crew members described the floor shifting under their feet, not dramatically, but subtly, like standing on a floating platform brushing up against a dock. One survivor's statement, included in a medical debrief, described it this way: "We weren't walking on a floor anymore. We were walking on something alive, pretending to be a floor." Another wrote, "The ice bulged beneath the walkway. I swear I saw it rise like something swelling inside a skin." These weren't hallucinations. The station's own structural monitors recorded vertical displacement, small but constant, traveling beneath the hallways as crew moved through them. The displacements followed them like ripples, as if something sensed motion above and mirrored it below. The first casualty report of the evacuation had nothing to do with a collapse. A technician attempting to cross corridor H3 fell suddenly when the floor shifted upward by almost 10 centimeters, caught her foot, and threw her sideways into a steel bulkhead. She never regained consciousness. It was one of many similar injuries that night. A common theme appears in multiple reports. The station wasn't failing, it was rearranging. The blue light spreads. As the crew moved upward, more individuals reported seeing the same pale blue glow threaded through fissures in the walls. What had previously been confined to the deep lower levels was now appearing closer to living areas. One document, a field note written hastily in bold pen, states, "The glow isn't light. It isn't illuminating anything. It's like it's inside the ice but not shining outward." Another frightened annotation on a different page. "Shapes behind the walls. Moving. Slower now. Watching?" That word, watching, recurs throughout the testimonies. The crew were beginning to believe the entity beneath the ice wasn't merely reacting to seismic pulses anymore. It was aware. It recognized movement, heat signatures, maybe even sound. The most chilling account came from a pair of engineers who attempted to access a maintenance corridor on the north wing. The corridor was unlit. Power fluctuations had already shut down half the station's lighting, but their handheld lamps illuminated the crystalline surface ahead. The engineer's testimony reads, "The ice wasn't clear before. Now it was almost transparent. You could see trapped bubbles, fractures, old tool marks. But then something long moved behind the wall, like a person, but stretched. When my light touched the wall, it stopped moving. Then it waited for my light to leave." This was not a hallucination. Both engineers reported the same sight. Neither was willing to move through that corridor. They doubled back and found another route, one that collapsed less than a minute after they passed through. The hum grows stronger. Just after 2:40, the underlying hum that had plagued the station for nights began to fluctuate in unpredictable ways. The frequency rose, dropped, then rose again, shifting like a breathing pattern growing uneven. A late entry in LS's notebook described it like this: "It feels like the hum is trying to match our footsteps. When we stop, it stops. When someone speaks loudly, the hum rises. If I didn't know better, I'd say it's listening." This interpretation wasn't universal. Some staff insisted the hum was nothing more than resonance caused by environmental stress and structural deformation. But even the most skeptical technician wrote, "The hum was directional tonight, coming from the corridor ahead, not the shaft, as if whatever was below us has moved." The missing team. As the evacuation progressed, attention turned to the maintenance crew that had been in the lower shaft during the initial collapse. Their location signal had disappeared earlier in the night, and now attempts to reach them by radio were met with only static. Efforts to access their last known location were thwarted by shifting ice and structural anomalies. One attempted rescue route ended at a corridor whose walls had pinched inward like a narrowing throat. A report states, "The metal framework was bent inward uniformly, not crumpled, bent. That kind of pressure requires intelligence or design." Another log added, "We knocked on the wall and felt a knockback, but from inside the wall, not the far side of the corridor." That was the last attempt. The rescue was abandoned. Their fate remains unconfirmed, though the seismic logs suggest something happened at the exact depth of their last known position. Something that created a sudden void in the structure before the readings normalized again. The official summary uses the phrase "presumed lost to structural failure." but the handwritten margin note next to it read, "No bodies, no equipment fragments, nothing." The deep hum becomes a voice. One of the most disturbing pieces of evidence in this packet was an audio fragment recorded by accident. A crew member carrying a portable recorder forgot to shut it off during the evacuation. In the background of the recording, between footsteps, ragged breathing, and distant structural groans, another sound is faintly audible. A layered vibration, rhythmic, rising and falling almost like speech. Spectral analysis from a later lab, not the station's own, revealed a repeating pattern buried inside the noise. The conclusion attached to that file read, "Acoustic imprint resembles modulated vocalization filtered through dense medium, pattern too structured to be natural." Or more plainly, a voice, not human, not clear, but intentional. Multiple staff independently reported the same impression. It sounded like someone trying to speak through water. One survivor swore he heard it say something that almost resembled his name. Another insisted she heard laughter. Nothing about the patterns was conclusively decipherable, but all agreed on one detail. The sound grew louder whenever someone spoke loudly or ran, like it was following their attention or feeding on it. The final corridor. By the time most staff reached the final junction leading to the surface access, the station was no longer recognizable. Walls were bulging outward in some places, inward in others. Some sections of ceiling were stretched taut, like a tent pulled too tight. Ice patterns swirled in unnatural spirals, and the blue glow permeated everything. A witness statement described the final approach. The corridor ahead of us shifted, actually shifted. We watched it move. The ice rippled from bottom to top like something sliding underneath the floor. When it passed, the lights dimmed. Another wrote, "We were being herded." It's unclear whether that interpretation was psychological or literal, but given the subsequent evidence, I cannot dismiss it. What the logs do confirm is that several observation team members remained behind even as the others pushed toward the exit. Their final task was to secure the last batch of seismic data and bring it topside. Which brings us to the moment that closes this episode, a moment preserved in the last intact text message issued from K31 before external communication cut off entirely. It was sent from the observation room at 2:57, just as the team prepared to leave. The message contains a single chilling sentence. It's not under the ice anymore. The next transmission attempt failed. Communications went dark, and the station's exterior sensors recorded one more seismic event, originating not from below the station, but from above it.